Sag suspension, salami, cilantro, sag suspension, salami. Sag suspension, salami, cilantro, sag suspension, salami. Oh, just hit me with the intro then. All right, hey, it's Chase with Legend Tech Tuesday, and in this video, we're gonna be talking about one of the A1 most important things that you can do with your suspension, and that's set them up correctly. So we're gonna be covering Revo and Revo A setup. Now, making sure that you're successful when you install your shocks is gonna depend on whether or not you set them up. One of our most common questions that we get is how to set them up or how to improve the ride. So whether you're an existing customer that's already got these and you're just looking to reconfirm that it was done correct, or you're a new customer bolting these on your bike and you want to make sure that it is done correct, we're going to go over a couple of different scenarios for you to make sure that you're setting these up with whatever kind of setup you've got on your bike. Now, setting the sag is going to be based on what length of shock you have, and we have these in 12s, 13s, and 14s. On a 12-inch shock, you're gonna have a 12-inch overall measurement, and they're gonna get a ½ of an inch of sag. On a 13 and a 14-inch shock, you'll have, again, respectively, a 13 or 14-inch measurement, and those will get 1 inch of sag. So if you swing over here to the bike, we're gonna show you what a couple of those different adjustments look like. We're gonna walk you through setting the preload, and then if you have the A model, we're gonna talk about rebound and how that comes into play as well. All right, so we're here at the shocks now on the bike. You've confirmed that they're installed correctly and you can pivot them on the spherical bearings. A couple of really important things that you're gonna wanna just double check first is where these springs are wound to out of the box generally are very even. However, if you've made some adjustments and you wanna make sure that these springs are identical, a little trick that you can do is just grab yourself a tape measure, and from a flat spot to the bottom of this lower spring retainer, you can just butt a tape measure up to that and just confirm on both shocks that they're wound evenly. Once you've got that done, you know that whatever input that you're gonna put into one shock is also gonna be done into the other shock as well. Generally, we like to just leave this logo on the coil facing outward on both sides. And that way, you know, if you need to add spring tension, if you were bent at the waist looking down at the top of your shock, a counterclockwise turn is gonna tighten that spring, it's gonna add more tension, and it's gonna reduce the amount of sag that you've got. If you turn it clockwise, that's going to lengthen the spring, that's gonna make it softer, and that's gonna increase your sag. That's another really important thing that you wanna note. We get that question a lot, is which way do I turn the spring? And trying to explain that over the phone sometimes can be a little difficult because of maybe how somebody's facing the bike or how they're looking at it. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna have a rider sit on the bike and we're gonna walk you through setting the sag on these shocks, show you the exact adjustments that we're making, the kind of measurements that we're getting, and that's gonna set you up for success. All right, so now we've got a rider on the bike. He's just in the standing position. We're gonna center bolt to center bolt measure these shocks here. Now, we know that this is a 13-inch shock. However, when you put it on the bike, you're gonna get a different measurement than 13 inches because the weight of the motorcycle is gonna compress those shocks a little bit. So whether it's 12, 13s, or 14s, just know that that's gonna be a little bit shorter distance for the weight of the bike. But if you don't know what length shocks you have, you can simply put a jack underneath the bike. You can raise that bike up till the wheel is just off the ground and it will fully extend this shock, and you can then take that center to center measurement just to confirm what length you do have if you bought the bike used or if you got it, you know, from a buddy and they didn't tell you what length they are. So we're gonna have the rider go ahead and sit down. Now here we're just gonna take a tape measure and we're just gonna measure from the center of the top shock bolt to the center of the bottom. So right now we're getting about 12¼ inches. So all we're gonna do is, because our target for the 13-inch shock is 1 inch of sag, we know that we've got a little bit more loosening of the spring to do to allow that shock to sag down to that exact 12-inch point. So we'll go ahead and have Rylan stand up here. And I'm just gonna back out about 3 turns out of each coil. That's 2 and 3. And this isn't movie magic. We actually have these shocks adjusted. So I'm gonna go over here to the other side and I'm just gonna back out 3 turns on this one as well. So now we've got those 3 turns taken out. Go ahead and have a seat. Give it a couple good bounces. And then we're just gonna double check this measurement again. So after taking those 3 turns out and lengthening that spring and softening it for this particular weight of rider, now we're at exactly 12 inches, and that's gonna be ideal sag. Something really important to note here is whether you have 12-inch shocks with a 1/2 inch of sag, 13 or 14-inch shocks with 1 inch of sag, that is the magic number.
And that's a magic number.
No matter whether he is solo, whether he adds a passenger, whether you add gear, whether you have heavy or light saddlebags, whether you're pulling a trailer, no matter what motorcycle these shocks are on, those are the sag measurements. Where that comes in handy is if we were to add a passenger now, this shock, being at its max sag, is going to compress beyond where we consider the ideal sag. That's gonna have too soft of a spring for a passenger now, so we're gonna wanna add some additional turns to account for that so that we come back to that same 1 inch of sag. If you have a 12-inch shock, no different. If this was at 11.5 inches right now, because you're minus a 1/2 inch off of that 12 inches, when you add a passenger, you're gonna compress that shock shorter. You've gotta add tension and tell it you've added a person to it and get back to that same 1/2 inch of sag. What that's gonna do for you is 1 inch of sag while you're solo, you add a passenger, you add the correct spring tension, and you're back to 1 inch of sag. That bike's gonna ride exactly the same solo as it will 2-up because you've adjusted this and this shock is going to act accordingly. That's a basic rundown of how to set the sag on these. If you have a standard Revo shock, once you've set this, you don't have the dial and you're always on setting 3, you're done. From that point, if you've got this set correctly for yourself, this rebound dial here is going to control the speed that this shock extends back open once it's been compressed. Now, a good place to start, if you don't know where to start, is gonna be on setting 3. So you'll just move your dial so that the number 3 is facing the bottom of the shock. Each shock is individual and needs to be adjusted separately. So you'll make sure that both of those are on setting 3. We suggest going and taking the bike for a ride. And then if you would like a firmer ride, you can just simply stop and click that to maybe setting 4, setting 5, or setting 6. That's going to slow down the speed that the shock extends open, and that's gonna give you a firmer ride. Again, if you're a more aggressive rider, that may also be a setting where you would wanna try a little bit higher number as well. On the flip side, if you start at 3 and you go to 4, maybe it's a little bit too firm, then you wanna try out maybe a setting 2 or a setting 1. That's gonna speed up the speed that the shock extends back open, and in most cases is gonna give you the perception of a softer ride. Now, there are a lot of personal preference in these numbers here. This is essentially a pick what you like. Everybody is very different when it comes to what rebound setting they're looking for. So there is no, hey, you're gonna love this, hey, you're gonna love that. Start on 3, it's a good happy medium, and then you just simply fine tune that to your preference from there. So we hope this gives you a little better insight into how to fine tune these shocks, how to set your sag correctly, whether you're an existing customer or a new customer that's looking to make sure that you're either confirming they're set correctly or setting them up for the first time, as well as what that rebound dial does for you. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Make sure you leave a comment in our video and let us know maybe what kind of content you think you'd like to see us make next. We will definitely start working on some more videos. Be a legend, and we'll see you next time on Tech Tuesday. Actually does for you when you're riding the motorcycle. So I'll do that. Camera 1, camera 2. From the top of the on Legend Tech Tuesday. And I need to reshoot that. Sag, suspension, salami, cilantro. Sag, suspension, salami, cilantro. Sag, suspension, salami, cilantro. You didn't tell me the camera was on.